Bronx, Oliveira!
Charles Oliveira da Silva is the former lightweight champion of the UFC. His run was nothing less than spectacular, an active champion whose fights always left you on the edge of your seat. Unfortunately, the Oliveira era ended on October 22, 2022, when he suffered his first defeat in 5 years at the hand of Islam Makhachev. In order to get back to that title fight, Charles was slated to fight Beneil Dariush at UFC 289. It seemed that a majority of fans had switched their tune on Charles Oliveira, but Charles showed on Saturday that he is the rightful number one contender. Charles has gained the opportunity to challenge for his throne once again after dismantling Dariush in the first round. To celebrate, let's take a dive through the life and career of Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Charles was born in the favela of Vicente de Carvalho in the town of Guarujá, Sao Paulo, Brazil. He originally dreamed of becoming a pro football player. However, at the age of 7, he started to feel ill. He was eventually diagnosed with rheumatic fever and a heart murmur, which severely affected him physically. The doctors told his family that he could become a paraplegic. He spent most of his time bedridden. However, that eventually changed. After 2 years, he started to improve and his family put him into sports programs. Oliveira's neighbor, Paulo, introduced him to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the age of 12. He began to train with Roger Coelho. Although Oliveira came from a low-income family, the coaches offered free classes. Oliveira's family helped fund his training by selling street snacks and discarded cardboard. At the age of 14, the man who introduced Charles to BJJ, Paulo, was killed in the crossfire of a shootout in Vicente de Carvalho. Oliveira won his first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament, the Sao Paulo State Championship in the junior division, in 2003, as a white belt. He won the Sao Paulo Championship again in 2004. He also won the Copa Nacau in 2005 and 2006, and won a total of 16 medals in his jiu-jitsu career. He earned his black belt in BJJ under Erickson Cardozo and Jorge Patino in 2010. Oliveira's MMA career started in 2007. He started off competing in Brazil, and he amassed a 12-0 record consisting of 6 knockouts and 5 submissions. Charles made his professional debut in March of 2008, debuting at the Predator Fight Championship promotion. The event was a Grand Prix in the welterweight division, where fighters had to compete 3 times to be crowned the champion. In the first round of the Grand Prix, Charles fought Jackson Pontius, where Charles won via rear naked choke. Oliveira's second fight was against Viscardi Andrade. Olives won the fight in the second round by TKO, which advanced him to the final round. Oliveira defeated Diego Braga by TKO in the first round, winning him the tournament. Oliveira bounced around a few more promotions and entered more tournaments. He won 8 fights in this time before he was eventually signed by the UFC in 2010. Oliveira debuted in the UFC in the lightweight division against Darren Elkins. The fight was originally scheduled for the finale of the Team Liddell vs. Team Ortiz Tough Season, but was eventually rescheduled for UFC Live Jones vs. Matyushenko due to visa issues. Oliveira submitted Elkins by armbar within 41 seconds of the first round. Oliveira's submission game is something MMA fans are aware of, and in this fight, Oliveira showed his fight IQ on the ground. He was taken down by Elkins early, but immediately started to work from his back, attempting a triangle choke and then eventually locking in the armbar. This earned Oliveira submission of the night. Oliveira's second bout was against Efrain Escudero at a UFC Fight Night 22. This was held at a catchweight as it was a short notice fight as Oliveira stepped in for Matt Wyman. Charlie Olives won this fight via standing rear naked choke in the third round. He was once again awarded submission of the night. At UFC 124, Charles faced Jim Miller on December 11, 2010. Oliveira unfortunately lost the fight via knee bar in the first round, marking his first loss in his career. In his fourth fight, Oliveira fought Nick Lentz, where he hit Lentz with an illegal knee that was unnoticed and eventually he locked in a rear naked choke. The win was later turned to a no contest. However, the fight was awarded Fight of the Night. Oliveira's 5th UFC fight was another short notice fight as he stepped in for an injured Paul Taylor to fight Donald Cerrone. Oliveira lost this fight by TKO in the first round. Now that Oliveira went 0-2-1 in his last 3, he planned to drop down to featherweight to hopefully find success. From 2012 to 2016, Charles Oliveira competed in the featherweight division where he went on a 7-5 run. Within this run, Oliveira missed weight a total of 4 times, with the most egregious coming in his fight against Ricardo Lamas, where Oliveira missed weight by nearly 10 pounds. This run at featherweight garnered Oliveira a lot of negative attention, with him not being able to make weight, and with some fights where he seemed to quit on himself. Oliveira did manage to win 6 more awards for his fights. Many of his losses come from notable names such as Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar, Anthony Pettis, and Cub Swanson. His fight against former lightweight champion Anthony Pettis was his recent loss before he decided to go back up to lightweight. On April 8th of 2017, Oliveira returned to lightweight to face Will Brooks. He won the fight via rear naked choke in the first round, gaining him another award as he was awarded Performance of the Night. Oliveira was then slated to fight Paul Felder on December 2nd of 2017. He lost the fight via TKO in the second round after Felder landed some damaging elbows in Charles's guard. In 2018, Charles Oliveira decided to leave his team. Charles claimed that the gym was mostly focused on BJJ with complementary striking. Charles was confident in his abilities on the ground, but wanted to improve his striking to become a more well-rounded fighter. He joined Shootabox in Sao Paulo. Charles still keeps his former coach Jorge Patino as his BJJ coach, but now he trains in the more aggressive Muay Thai style that Shootabox is known for. This, my friends, was the beginning of the Charles Oliveira era. From 2018 to 2020, Charles would go on a tear and amass an 8-fight win streak. To kick off that streak, he would go on to submit UFC veteran Clay Guida in the first round via guillotine choke. Charles would eventually get revenge against Jim Miller 8 years after their first bout. He would win by submitting Jim 1 minute and 15 seconds into the first round via rear naked choke. This fight would earn him his 7th Performance of the Night bonus, setting a new record and would extend his record for most submissions in the UFC with 12. On March 14, 2020, Oliveira was set to face off against former title contender Mr. I See Holes in His Game, Kevin Lee.
The biggest question is, where does Kevin Lee fit into this?
He fits right here in motherfucking Charles Oliveira's 8-fight win streak. Charles Oliveira won the fight via guillotine choke in the third round, once again earning a Performance of the Night bonus and extending his submission record to 14. In December of the same year, Charles was set to face former interim lightweight champion and boogeyman of the division, Tony Ferguson. Although this was the beginning of Tony Ferguson's downfall, this was still an impressive win, as no one has ever ragdolled Tony like Charlie Olives did. Also, that armbar that Charles locked in on Tony is something that gets shared around to this day, because no one knows how the fuck Tony never tapped to that. What the fuck was that? That's crazy. I cringe every time I watch that. Oliveira could not put away the durable Tony Ferguson and won by unanimous decision. This was his first win by decision since 2014. He gained another Performance of the Night award for this fight. These awards showcase how exciting and skilled Charles Oliveira is. May 15th, 2021. Charles would go on to face former 3-time Bellator lightweight champion Michael Chandler for the vacant lightweight championship following Khabib's retirement. The scenario for this fight was something else. Chandler made headlines by dismantling Dan Hooker in his debut, and Charles was on his career resurgence. The hype for this fight was real, my friends. Despite getting rocked in the first round, Charles would go on to TKO Iron Michael Chandler, and thus being crowned the new UFC lightweight champion. With this fight, Oliveira broke the record for most finishes in UFC history. Charles would go on to defend his belt once, with that being against former interim lightweight champion and Conor McGregor TKOer, Dustin Poirier. Many thought Dustin would take this fight handedly. After being knocked down in the first round once again, Oliveira would find a way to win. He submitted Dustin Poirier in the third round by standing rear naked choke. Oliveira would attempt to make his second title defense against another former interim holder, in Justin Gaethje. This fight, however, was surrounded in controversy, as Oliveira missed weight by half a pound, making him the first champion to be stripped due to missing weight. There was a lot of speculation surrounding this weigh-in, as Oliveira looked confused as to how he was 155 and 1/2 pound. There were rumors going around that every fighter weighed in half a pound more than what they weighed in themselves on digital scales. There is, however, no solid evidence supporting if the calibration on the scale was off or not. As the bell rang for his fight with Justin Gaethje, Oliveira would officially be stripped of his UFC title. At UFC 274, Oliveira was set to face Gaethje. As it is a trend, Oliveira was dropped in the first round, but following the other trends, Oliveira managed to pull through and knock down Justin Gaethje with a right hand of his own. He went on to submit Gaethje in the first round via rear naked choke. This would then set up a fight between Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev for the vacant lightweight title. The fight was set for UFC 280 on October 22, 2022. At this point, Oliveira had squashed the belief that he was a quitter and that he couldn't compete with these top dogs. That being said, Islam was the betting favorite leading into the fight, as he had a 10-fight winning streak leading up to his first title fight. And being the protege of Khabib Nurmagomedov, the lightweight GOAT, it's hard not to see why Islam was the favorite. Charles was confident leading up to the fight, ready to prove that the championship is not vacated, and that the rightful owner is Charles Oliveira.
O campeão tem nome, se chama Charles do Bronx. Pode bater, bate, que não homem aqui aguenta, rapaz. Nós é iluminado, rapaz. Tá faltando alguma coisa aqui, cadê meu cinturão?
On October 22nd, 2022, Oliveira was sadly defeated by Islam. In the second round, Charles was dropped, and with Islam not fearing his jiu-jitsu, he locked in an arm triangle and submitted Charles, claiming the title. This brings us to today. After the stellar performance he gave at UFC 289, Charles has proven not only to the UFC brass, but to us fans that he is deserving of being Islam Makhachev's next opponent. Charles has all the tools possible to defeat Islam. Many fans had complaints towards Oliveira after the remarks he made during an interview about how he didn't watch the loss to Islam and claiming that it was not him that night. I understand the criticism, but many fighters have come out after a loss saying that it wasn't them that night or that they didn't show up.
Donald showed up. Cowboy wasn't there. Wrong guy showed up. Couldn't get going. Couldn't get excited. Couldn't get fired up. Didn't want to be there. Biggest fight. All the attention. My time to shine. I didn't want to be there. It was crazy, man.
As a Charles fan, watching the fight against Islam, I can agree that something was off about him that night. The combined pressure of being in Islam's turf and the threat of his wrestling seemed to make Charles nervous in the bout. Every fighter has their off nights, and this was one for Charles. There's nothing wrong with that. After the fight, Charles was seen devastated in the locker room, and his coach said that they'll all need to go back to the gym and improve. The statement made by Charles wasn't him being delusional or not accepting the loss. It seemed more like a disappointment in himself. If Charles wants to regain the championship, he needs to show more of the patience and technical striking prowess he displayed against Beneil. Charles performs well off of his back and can neutralize any ground and pound that Islam can dish out. He needs to stay focused on the feet and avoid getting rocked. Even if he loses to Islam again, Charles has left behind an absolutely stellar career and an inspiring comeback story, from a potentially paraplegic to a UFC champion. Charles has been an underdog for many of his fights, and he has come out and proved time and time again that he is a champion with or without the belt. There is no one as exciting as Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira.
Cara, ninguém nunca vai me bater mais do que a vida me bateu. Por isso que eu falei, eu vou voltar e vou voltar mais forte, vou buscar esse cinturão de volta.
You know, man, no one's ever going to hit me as hard as life has hit me. So fell down, and I'm going to get up, and I'm going to get this belt back.